So
All right.
this is ACF at Kennesaw campus,
Yep.
Tuesday night. What's today? The 26th?
27th, I think.
Yeah, November 27th. We're in 263 in Carmichael Student Center in the CARC. And everybody say your name and who's here. I'm Emily Wells, advisor for ACF on the Kennesaw campus.
My name is Kennedy. I'm a freshman here at Kennesaw.
Aaron Thompson, freshman.
I'm Jalen Lawrence, and I'm a freshman at Marietta campus. Big M. Yep.
Hey.
Yep. But you gotta speak louder if you're gonna be a part of it.
Hey, I was facing the thing.
So Jalen's agreed to open us with prayer tonight.
Okay. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for allowing us to get to the end of the semester. It has been stressful for all of us, so please help us to make it through the finals and help us to have an enjoyable break and help us to also have a good time in this meeting and help us to be productive. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. So, I was looking at one of our handouts, and the question on the handout, you may have seen it, and let me see, I stuffed it in my purse. The question is, can I survive spiritually on a secular campus?
Well,
So, there seems to be some different opinions around the table.
I mean, it's kind of hard for all of us because we're all freshmen, so we don't have any experience. We've only been here for a semester.
You can't speak for everybody.
Oh, you're right.
So,
Ooh.
so you can only give your perspective, which might be something relatable to someone listening. So, if you all don't mind, hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. We just opened with prayer and we're podcasting.
It's hot in here.
It's hot?
But I'm not gonna complain because it's cold outside.
Oh, I don't feel it, but, I mean, it's not cold, but that's a good thing. So, we just threw out the question, can I survive spiritually on a secular campus? And I just want you to think about that for a minute. And if you want to share, I want to hear, and I'm sure there's some people who can relate to
I think you can. It's just that you really have to stay grounded in what you believe in, because it's so easy to get swayed. Because there, so many like religious organizations on campus.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stay grounded in what you believe in as an Adventist, I think you could be just fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like
Thanks for that, Kennedy.
I feel like it's better to be on a secular campus because it forces you to. Because actually, I read something earlier today. I think it was my Sabbath school lesson or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was like you can't really see like the issues until you're like thrown into it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you can't see the rats in the sewers unless you open it and surprise them.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess being in a
You can't see. I'm sorry.
like you can't see like, for example, okay, so I don't know if a lot of people like dealt with roaches or rats or whatever, but like if you flick on the lights, you'll see them like if they're like there and they run away before like anything happens. So like you can only catch the issues when you catch them off guard or you throw yourself into unfamiliar situations and stuff like that. So I guess coming to a secular campus kind of forces you to get real with yourself and like what you stand for. 'Cause I feel that's what I've noticed, because at Oakwood or whatever, it's kind of easy to mask your spirituality, I guess, because everyone's forced to go to chapel, where here you have to actually make a conscious decision. So that's one cool thing I realized. So I guess it's possible, but you have to make a conscious decision. That's just with anything though, like with working out or eating right, whatever. So
Okay. If you just came to the table, the question is, can I survive spiritually on a secular campus?
Yeah, I think it's preferred to, like he said, I feel like it's better to go to a secular campus, especially like for me, high school was a great, I wouldn't say test, but I kind of really saw how the world really works. I had been to private elementary school, private middle school,
Okay.
and then when I went to high school, it was a shock kind of, and I'm glad I went to a secular public high school, because if I went to a private high school, the way, unfortunately, that churches and denominations kind of organize their curriculum around, like spirituality, around the Bible, around all that stuff, it's really formal, and it's really kind of modulated like it's just another class. It's not actually necessarily like a life.
if you don't
it's
love
not
God, you
necessarily-
get an F.
Right. It's like not necessarily a life message or a way. It's not a lifestyle. It's like a class. And most people go through that, and even some pastors are kind of still in that mindset because they go to seminary school and they learn all of these things. They usually don't go out and learn for themselves or read for themselves. Because most people I knew that when I went to private school, they wouldn't go outside of school and read the Bible. They would go outside and maybe exercise or spirituality. I feel like if you go, you can't learn as much. I feel like in a organized institution where you're kind of forced to go. For example, we can go like what just happened, Thanksgiving, right? You were raised in school to believe that Thanksgiving happened because the pilgrims and the natives came together and were like, hey, let's, you got the corn, I got the bread, and that's not really what happened at all. The pilgrims actually slaughtered a whole bunch of Native Americans and celebrated afterwards. That's what actually happened. But you wouldn't have known that had you not went out. Just like there's some things in the Bible that can be misinterpreted, and that's the reason why there are so many different denominations that people believe it differently. But when you're raised, I guess, Adventist all your life, that puts you in a bubble, And if somebody tries to come pop that bubble, you're not prepared to deal with kind of the things that they say. That's why I always like biblical apologists, because they would go and they would answer the hard questions, and I feel like once you kind of take that apologist mindset, you'll be able to kind of stand firm in your faith. Because I feel like hard times, like you said, with working out, you don't build muscle, you don't build strength by lifting the little weights over and over and over. You have to lift the large weights, progressing to get stronger. And it's the same with your faith. If you're around people who think the same as you all the time, that's just not how the world works, unfortunately. And plus, it allows you to see different perspectives, because when you're grown up in religious and after this kind of focus, it causes you to think that everybody else kind of is wrong overall, and that their way of life can't offer you anything, because you're like, oh well, I was taught it's so and so, and you can't broaden your perspective or your horizon when you're just strictly in one denomination or one sect. But I do believe that being in a secular university will help. Well, I think this is like a wake-up call to some. And wake-up call as in, well, one, the world is really like this, so I probably need to get my act together. Two, maybe my faith isn't as strong as I thought it was. Or three, that people are really out there who do need to hear what we have to say.
Can I say something? Give it some time. Give it some time.
Give what some time.
This is your freshman year. You're gonna go through a lot more.
I know.
The question is, can I survive spiritually on a secular campus?
Yeah.
So is there?
Give it some time.
Yeah.
That's really all I have to say. Like legit, give it some time.
Anywhere.
You can. I believe you can. Here's the thing. You're gonna run into a lot of things that will try you, and not just a lot.
So dramatic.
Well, let it be dramatic. It's the truth. You're gonna run into a lot of things. Listen, and not everybody's experience is the same. Some people have an easier time going through college than others. Some people actually, to be honest, some people don't even have that spiritual walk with college. It's just, you know, I show up to whatever and but other people, like, you take it more seriously, and you'll notice around you that there's gonna be things that are probably gonna be like, people are gonna come up to you and challenge you on what you believe. And you're gonna start to question what you believe here and there. But as time progresses, it's up to you to decide whether I'm gonna go talk to God about this and be like, well, God, help me with this. Give me some strength, you know? You'll find out. But it's great seeing you guys. I gotta go do some work.
I kind of felt that because, like, I mean, my first semester, nothing popped off. No temptations occurred. So I guess I have to live a little bit, like experience college first before all that happens. But I guess that's, like, the more I see my friends, like, they've drastically changed, and they go to, like, an Adventist school. Like, they'll come back, like, for Thanksgiving, they came back, and they wild out for literally no reason, outside of just doing it for the culture or the clout, whatever. And it was just like, what's the point? Like, I mean, I went to Adventist school my whole life, so this is completely different to me. And I guess, like, being able to experience it through the eyes of Adventism, I guess, helps you appreciate it more. Because a lot of people have literally no hope. That's why a lot of them, like, I mean, I hang with some people who smoke and everything, like, deal drugs and everything. So I guess that's they're out of it. And so, I mean, I'm not really shocked anymore. I guess I'm kind of desensitized to it too. But I guess it does give you appreciation for having a higher power to, like, talk to. Because sometimes it doesn't make any sense at all. So I guess your circumstance will cause you to have a relationship. So it could, your need for survival, I guess, would lead to you being more spiritual, sort of.
Any other perspectives? We're talking about, can I survive spiritually on a secular campus?
I would say a verse I try to live by is Proverbs 13:20. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. A lot of things, I guess, it goes back to choosing your friends, because if you're with the wrong people at the wrong time, that a lot of stuff that could have been avoided is gonna happen to you. A more, I guess, kind of funny but not like completely funny example, when they did the manhunt thing and that person climbed up on the building.
Oh, my roommate, yeah.
Yeah. So
Was it Ben?
Ben was the one who jumped off and broke his leg.
So like that.
So that's
something
a
like
separate,
that.
whole separate.
So something like that. If you people do things like that usually in groups. It's not just like one person like, let me go do this. It's like, oh, their friends are doing that, and
He was motivated to do it, by the way.
So
How high was he?
He wasn't intoxicated at all. It was just...
No, I said, no, how high was he?
Oh, like higher than that. You know,
It
anyway.
was the roof.
Yeah, like not the roof of the building, but you know those little above the windows, like below the windows, a little blocks.
thought he was
I think he was
Spider-Man.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, they were like, he was like, "Do you guys think I can like make it if I jump off?" And they were like, "Yeah, you got it, man, you got it." And he jumped off and he landed wrong, and
Did y'all record it, though?
I wasn't outside.
Dang.
I was woken up at like 1 o'clock when they're like, "Hey, he's hurt." And I was like,
Y'all let the
"Why
whole
is he
team
hurt?"
down.
And they're like, "He jumped off the roof," and I lost all sympathy right there.
That's hilarious.
But something like that, or I guess let's say like smoking or something. Somebody's like, hey, let's go do this or whatever, and you already know like the effects of smoking and the stuff that comes with it. So instead of seeing this whole group of people go do it, you're like, hey man, no, maybe I don't want to do that, or I have something else to do, and you just go. Maybe they go somewhere, they're underage, they get arrested, and you're in your room, and they're gone. So something like that.
You're gone.
But just like play the devil's advocate, I guess it's harder to make friends in college anyway. So peer pressure is a lot easier for some people.
Look, you have to know your crowd. Because I know sometimes, like, the strategy that I've employed is like, think of it in this way. Usually, like, I've looked at a lot of, like, I tried to become an apologist myself. I'm on my way to becoming a Christian apologist. So I look at a lot of the counter arguments against Christianity. Most of the time, we're unrelatable, uptight, and unapproachable at the same time. Because somebody approaches you like, hey, I do drugs twice a day. I have an alcohol problem. You'll be like, the power of Christ compel you. Sorry, I don't need that in my life. There's not really much love or compassion as far as like most recently we've been put in a bad light with the recent homosexuality movement, and obviously the opposition, the clashing sides, like all Christianity even hates this revolution, blah 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 blah. And America has turned kind of not anti-spirituality. There's a lot of spiritual people out there, but not the right type of spirituality. I feel what I'm saying. But to digress,
spiritualism.
Yeah, spiritualism really. But something that I've kind of been able to do is to not be overbearing with spirituality. I've been able to bless more people by not talking about Christ or by not talking about the Bible and everything, but not bringing it into every discussion, by just kind of like allowing them to feel comfortable. Once somebody feels comfortable with you, then they're more likely to believe what you're saying and be more, I guess, like they'll reciprocate it and they'll absorb what you're saying more, because at that point you have a connection like, oh, you're just a normal, person. You have the faults that I do. You're not perfect, I'm not perfect. And then when you explain to them kind of how you go through your day, how you get, the things you do, how you get the grades you get, how you live the life you live, then they'll be like, oh wow, if you can do that, and we're practically the same person, then I can do that too. And I think a lot of Christians kind of forget that it takes, I feel like, a strong spiritual character to be able to live in an environment, because I feel like people forget the instructions of Christ. He says, be in the world, but not be of the world. And I feel like Christians try to take themselves out of the world. And they instead of being in the world, they just remove themselves from the world altogether. So he said, be in the world. And most of the people that he went for, tax collectors, dishonest people. He was with the harlots at one point, and they were like, why do you, like, he was sitting with them and talking with them, and they're like, why do you talk with them even though, they're sinners, they do the things that they do. And he said, people that are already living right, I forget what exact wording that he said, but he said, I didn't come to save people who are already knowing what to do, And I feel like if we want to be like him, then we should not push away those who live in opposition to us, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense.
I feel like we do that a lot. We get in our little Christian groups, and we just stay there. And we don't ever kind of move out. And we'll have friends like Jalen's favorite friends who smoke whatever, but we will never get like to know them or connect with them, because we're like, well, I don't want to get dragged into that. And I feel like that's where your spiritual life has to be tested, because Christ would obviously like, hey man, I don't smoke, but I'll come hang with you. We can talk, we can vibe, get something to eat or something.
Sounds edible.
Okay, we can go eat or something, and then you find a way to just connect with them, and eventually there's so much you can bring up, and just to not say like, hey man, you need Jesus. Like, I feel like that's too much of a default, which is also my problem, or I guess my not distaste. What's the word? I don't really like Christian education. Reservation. Yeah. I don't like really Christian education in that sense, because they're like, okay, here's the formula. If you're with this type of person, tell them they need Jesus and just preach the gospel, and it'll work. And it doesn't work. It's probably the most ineffective strategy that I've seen. And really, it just removes the individuality of that lifestyle. It makes it kind of like a mob mentality. We all go to church. We're all like, yes.
Hive mind.
Yes, exactly. We all have a hive mind. So when somebody says something, we're just like, okay, automatic response, go. You know what I'm saying? And we don't kind of take into account that each person is different. Each person has a different spiritual walk and different spiritual needs. So that's my approach, is not to really push anybody away in that respect. And I feel like I've come long enough in my way to know how much, I guess, temptation I can handle before, some bad choices are made. Because if you're able to be in a tempting situation, but not crack, they'll ask you. They're like, hey man, you always hang out with us when we smoke, but you never smoke yourself. Why don't you? And you're like, oh man, well, personally, I don't really live that lifestyle. They're like, well, why not? It's healthy, And you're like, well, I don't like what it does to my mind, my spiritual aspect. They're like, oh, are you a Christian? And you can be like, you don't really have to say, you're like, yes, I'm a Christian. I go to such and such. You can be like, yeah, I believe that, God had a son or whatever. And they'll be like, oh, really? That's the type of conversation that can happen, as opposed to like, hey, man, do you want to smoke with us? No, man, because y'all are heathens. So I'm a Christian and I don't do that because that won't connect with them well. You kind of have to sneak in there. Just be like,
low key.
Yeah.
Well, just be sensitive to other people and not offensive.
Yeah, sure.
Which is what Christ did.
Yeah. But I feel like it's easier on a public, like, there's less judgment on this campus than on a Christian campus. Because just for the hypothetical, if someone was gay at, say, Southern or Andrews, it's a big deal. But here, you can live your lifestyle. Like, people respect your lifestyle regardless of what you are. So even if you're a Christian, as long as you're not berating anyone, they won't, like, hate you for it. Because, like, a lot of my friends, like, know that I like, worship on a different day. They don't, like, they're like, whatever. Like, it's cool. We'll just work around your schedule, whatever. So, I mean, as long as you're not berating people, like, you're coming to them as people instead of tokens. Because some people see winning souls for Christ as, like, a game. Not necessarily a game. Yeah, competition, yeah. So, like, I've won 10,000 souls for Jesus or something like that. But, like, yeah, I mean, so, like, it's kind of a weird complex. And that's one of the things that the General Conference is dealing with right now, too, which is kind of funny.
They encourage it.
Yeah, and I guess the sad thing is that a lot of people only know Adventists as those things anyway. So it's kind of hard to, like, even...
We're also looked at as a cult.
Exactly, so...
I don't know if y'all saw it, but when Prince died, they released a documentary. Prince was actually my great-grandma knew Prince. Prince was raised SDA.
So was Daniel Caesar.
Yeah.
So hurt.
But they were like, he was raised in a strict religious cult of Seventh-day Adventists. And I was like, oh, that's not what that is.
Depending on the person who raised him, it could be.
Yeah, there are some very, very religiously tight. And I feel that's another thing about universities. Like as far as I know, people who have been brought up in a strict religious environment. Just go ahead.
You made a big deal.
Who have been brought up in a strict religious environment tend to, when they get on their own, they tend to
wild out,
absolutely lose their mind, because one, their faith was never their faith; it was always their parents' faith, or their sister's faith, or there's just a family thing. Why do we do this? Because my pastor said so. All their questions usually aren't answered. They don't understand really what God, who God is. They don't understand what's going on. Man, they tend to just not care because it's been forced at them. They're like,
right, believe
this. And since they've been constrained, and every time they acted out in a certain way that they had been secular, their parents were like, snap it back into place. They tend to absolutely lose their mind when they get outside by themselves. Like, if hopefully that doesn't happen to most people, but actually it tends to.
It's even kind of like a stereotype, because when I told them I wasn't going to Oakwood, like, every time I come home for the weekend and I go to church, they already expect me to have a girl or something. Like, they expect something. Like, deacons will come up to me like, so how's the girls? I'm like, okay. But say I get a girl pregnant or something like that, not saying it will happen, but if something like that happened, they will turn on me so fast. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, actually, what they're sharing with you is what they think. They're sharing with you what
their mindset is. Okay.
Exactly. So you can just, you figure out how you want to respond.
I guess another thing is, like, not personalizing Adventism. Not necessarily, I guess I used the word wrong, but not basing it based off of the people. Because sometimes we like to demonize a religion because of the people who are a part of it. So I guess that's one of the things that we're dealing with too, because they have the whole issue with the worship stuff. Like, the worship styles, black, white, whatever. And how we're not sure if we're unit, like...
Well, there's a whole black conference and white conference.
Oh, that's true, too.
Yeah,
but
that's a whole...
That's a whole different thing. That's a different thing.
Yeah, because I have issues with that. Seems like we've somewhat exhausted that question. But what I really want to know is, what do you do personally to survive on this secular campus?
I can't even lie. Sometimes.
What?
I can't even lie to you. Sometimes I will go like days before I like pray. And I'm like, dang.
Well, I'm asking you what you do, not what you do not do.
It's like, I don't know, honestly. I'll try to pray and stuff. I'll get into a rhythm, and then, like, a big assignment will come up, and I'll just stay up late, wake up late, whatever, and my whole schedule will just fall apart. And I'm like, oh well. Like, I haven't prayed before I ate in, like, so long.
Okay, but that's habit and tradition.
Yeah.
Prayer is a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You don't always have to be in prayer posture. You don't always have to close your eyes. You don't always have to be on your knees.
Yeah, that's something that people don't teach, though.
But it's a relationship that you have with Christ.
I guess that's why I feel like I don't do anything.
But that's because of tradition that you've been taught as a child. So now, as young adults, you have to develop your own rituals and routine and communication style with your Heavenly Father. It can't be your moms
That's
or your
true.
dads or your big brothers. It's got to be
It's just like,
yours.
it's hard in general. Like, we're in college too, so like we can't really like, it's hard to break away in a sense, kind of. Like, depending on your like family setup, it's hard to like think for yourself. Not necessarily like.
But now is the time to experiment with that.
Yeah, but like,
and you're gonna make some mistakes.
like, you know how I was talking about how I want to change majors and stuff, and how they're coming at me hard and stuff. So like, that's one aspect, but now you have religion on top of that. Like, say, not necessarily like I'm about to become Baptist or something like that, but like, say I don't necessarily want to go to church or something like that.
I hear
because
what you're saying, but having a relationship with Christ is not going to church every Sabbath.
Oh man,
It's
that would
not,
save so much.
But you're talking about traditions.
Mm-hmm.
You're in say somewhat of a test environment,
of the world.
and you have to decide. Okay, I'm not under my parents' roof, so what am I going to establish for myself? And most of you are in the early stage of that. You have to decide, okay, I'm going to live my life my way. But you have to decide what you're going to keep and what you're going to experiment with and what you're going to throw away. And
sometimes I want to just throw
something
the whole
that
thing
that's
away.
something that our denomination is struggling with, because they don't understand why your
Generation
is not up with traditional ways
Oh,
and
don't I get me
modes
started on this one?
of spirituality. They just don't get it.
Okay, so
But I didn't grow up Adventist.
yeah, because
So I see what's going on, and I hate to say it, but I'm glad I did.
Because when I grew up as an Adventist my whole life. I went to LA, GAAA. I was going to go to Oakwood, but thankfully I didn't. I almost did go to Oakwood.
Yeah,
But
so I feel bad. I sent my kids to Southern and Oakwood, and
I guess this won't be
I'm
backed
not
by
saying that it's
GC.
bad. It's not bad. It's a choice. But going forward, how do you see yourself in this test environment?
I feel like
How do you? Well, let's give some other people a chance to respond.
they don't want to talk. They're not saying
You're not giving them a
I'll say
chance
something.
to.
Wait, what's the question? Oh yeah.
Okay, how do you see yourself developing your own personal spirituality or relationship with God now that you're out of your parents' home, and you're deciding what you want from life and how you want to live your life and how you want to establish for your future or even for the present? How do you? What kind of things are you thinking about? And it might be something that you're not thinking about. I know a lot of students who grew up in Adventist homes are still, you may not live at home Monday through Friday, but before sundown, you're back at home because it's almost like an unspoken agreement that you will be in that house and live by those rules.
I'm attacked. I feel
I was
attacked.
that.
I know.
I feel
Yeah.
attacked.
So where are you now? How did you get to that place?
I think, well, going back to the question, I think it's like a lot of trial and error. You can't really get to that place. You're gonna fall sometimes. But yeah, freshman year, I was that person. What helped me grow is like knowing, like, if I do fall, it's been easier to know I can go right back to God. Then before it was hard, like I'll probably never talk to him, but now just knowing that I can go back to him, and it makes it easier, and it's not like, you know. So I think that's what it is. It's just trial and error, just knowing, you know, finding that connection with him, and you'll find it soon. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
I think
The question was, that's okay. You're so hungry.
No, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I got to.
Oh. I think we all are. But the question was, you know, now that you are out of, you know, you live in our campus and you're out of your parents' home and you're, you know, establishing your own lifestyle and your own values, and you developing your spirituality without the training wheels.
For me personally, since I heard a lot of people say like they still had to go home like as a freshman to church, surprisingly my mom like didn't do that. Like she allows me to like stay here and, you know, just venture out to different churches, which I kind of like, because don't get me wrong, I love my home church because that's where I was like blessed and raised pretty much. But being able to like venture out to different churches while still getting like a message from God, I think is still very beneficial. And I try to go to church, but it could be like so hard in this environment because, you know, college is like a lot more work than in high school, because you have to make sure everything's due at a certain time. You have to make sure you're on top of things, because if you're not, it's so easy to fall behind. So, and it's sometimes during the weekend where it's like, do I really want to go to church? I'm just so tired, which it has happened maybe like 3 times so far this semester. But I would always have to like say to myself, okay, you get to rest for like this 1 week or so, but then like the next week you have to go to church. Because with me, if I think I keep on building this habit of, oh, I'm too tired to go to church, maybe I shouldn't go, then I can feel as if it'll develop into like a bad habit of, you know what, let me just stay home, and you know. So yeah, I think for me, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but for me personally, I think like going to church, like physically going to church, helps, because, you know, how do I put this in words? It just, you know, gives me that like spiritual blessing I need for the week, you know. And there are also options of watching church online, which is okay, but to me it's not the same as like physically being in church. Yeah. Because my mom suggested that, like, she was like, if you stay home, like, some weekends, you can always just watch it. I'm like, but that's not really the same thing. Like, you know, I like physically being in church, like, feeling the, you know, the blessing of it, like, in person. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
I'll be honest with you guys. It was like nothing really changed. I guess it was the way kind of I was raised. I was raised by my mom and my grandparents. My grandfather was raised Seventh-day Adventist. My grandfather, I think, converted my grandmother, because I think she was raised Baptist. And she's actually more strict than he is, which is interesting. Then they raised my mom, you know, SDA. She went to a Seventh-day Adventist school, and she is really interesting, I guess, in the way she kind of handles that situation. Because there were many times when she just wouldn't go to church because she was tired. And she would remind me that it's a rest day, not a going to church day. We just so happen to rest and go to church on the same day. Because there's no, you know, biblical law that says, hey, you have to go to church on the Sabbath. I could go to church on Sunday and rest on Saturday, which is, there's no problem with that spiritually. It just depends who you are. But it is pretty convenient. You don't go to church and rest on the same day. And so, you know, sometimes she'd be like, do you want to go to church? Like she gave me a lot of freedom early on. And that allowed me to make a lot of my decisions. And about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago by now, I started doing my own spiritual, I guess, study and research, intensive research, where I would go watch different videos, different, I guess, seminars, if you want to put it that way, and I would read certain abstracts. I looked into different denominations to see what they thought, because I truly wanted to, I'm not the type of person to take things at face value, right? And so my beliefs have changed, and they veered a little bit away from Seventh-day Adventism, but that's just, my own personal journey. And, it's still the denomination that I align with the most. Because I do believe we're doing a lot of things right, but, nothing's perfect, of course. And just like how my mom allowed me to get out there, and once I got a car, it was really up to me. Because, she already kind of started out making me drive everywhere when I got the car. And so when I got my license, she made me drive her car. But once, senior year really was kind of my time where I could choose whether I went to church or not. And there were some days when I would wake up and I would be like, I'm not going to go because I'm really tired. And I believe that if you are really tired and if you are drained, that if you go to participate in church, you're not going to really pay attention to the sermon. You're going to fall asleep. You're going to be irritated. It doesn't put you in a very, receiving, restful mindset. And when I went, I almost did go to Oakwood because I prayed. And I told, because I didn't know if God wanted me to be a minister or not, or be a minister yet, I guess if that's the right phrasing. And, I prayed, I was like, listen, we don't have the money right now to go to Oakwood because it's out of state. So I wouldn't be getting my Hope Scholarship money. So I let him know, I was like, hey, if you want me to go there, I need, pretty much close to full ride, so it wouldn't be that much of a burden on my mom.
Right.
He did scare me a little bit because after I prayed the next day, there was a letter in the mail for some scholarship money to go there. And I was like, ooh. I was like, I prayed that, but I wasn't really prepared for that type of, reciprocation. But eventually, no more, nothing else kind of came through enough for it would be, viable for me to go. And my mom didn't really want me to go because she went to Andrews, I think. She knew kind of how things went, and she knew that just because you went to a Seventh-day Adventist university does not mean that the people there will be any different than they are here. If anything, they will probably be worse. When I came here, I'll be honest with you, one of the main reasons why I go to, at least to the Marietta church, is to drive people like him and him there. Because I personally don't really want to. Did I not drive you there last Sabbath or 2 Sabbaths ago? I didn't at all. Okay, so
It's okay.
We're gonna pretend like it didn't happen. Hey Ben.
You been.
So I would prefer, there's another church back in my hometown, Hiram Estate, really, really small. It's like a one-room kind of.
Which church?
Hiram Estate.
Hiram.
I've never heard of that church before.
It's really, really nice. It can be scary for some, because their Sabbath schools are really intense, I guess. I remember one time they were doing an intro before the sermon, and they were talking about the Pope and how he's a Jesuit, and how, what the Jesuit creed was, and what that means for Seventh-day Adventists, and what type of legislation may be getting passed that would, damage our church and make our beliefs not necessarily illegal, but where we would legally be affected by some legislation. They were doing that type of real world stuff. And I really appreciated that because honestly, at Marietta, they don't talk about that at all. They talk about Christianity is just always gonna be around, always gonna be allowed. And I understand that. I understand kind of focusing on trying to get your relationship right, but there also needs to be a sense of urgency with that message. I believe that the message is delivered as, go at your own pace. Jesus loves you. He'll be right there every step of the way, which, that's true. And it really is true. But people won't see that as listen, things are about to get really weird really fast. There's a lot of, in my research, I've looked into kind of the behind the scenes, not necessarily occult sciences, but how kind of the history of the history of America, who actually came here, what certain symbols mean, what certain symbols music artists are throwing up, all of that other stuff. And the reason I still have an interest in that because my mom introduced that to me, and it was scary at first when you kind of realize what stuff means and what the history of certain signs are, what certain activities are. But now that I had that message early and that I understood what was going on, that has allowed me here to be more aware. And one of the things that I do, at least when I had my Fitbit on, and I fell off a little bit because I needed to be charged, but I think I mentioned this earlier in like the first ACF meeting, where I would have a reminder every hour. It would just buzz because I couldn't put text in it to watch. And I would like just say like a quick 15-second, 30-second prayer every time to try to keep that constant contact with the Father and in heaven. And I wanted to try to get my prayer life intact because my spirituality was there and my reasoning was there and my spiritual background. I had read a lot. I mean, of course, because I went to private school for 8 years, so I knew enough of the Bible. Really, mostly Old Testament. Actually, I was raised on the Old Testament practice, which is why kind of my beliefs differ a little bit from modern day Christianity, because I used to not know any of the Christ stories. So I used to like Moses, Elijah, Ezekiel, all that stuff. So I was really raised. My mom did a good job, I guess. Is what I really want to say. Because not only did she allow me to make my own decisions, not only did she allow me the freedom to explore different aspects and allow me to learn on my own, but she also never forced anything on me. And she always told me why we did things. Like, why do we bless our food? She explained that to me. Why do we pray before we go to bed? Because we need to talk to God. Right? Why do we say prayers of thanks? Why do we tithe? Why do we all do these things? She explained that to me. And she played a large factor in kind of bringing me closer to God at an age that I actually was. Because I think by the time I got baptized, I was like 8, maybe. I was baptized really young. And I kind of knew the gravity of what I was doing, but at the same time I didn't. And I feel like most people who do end up getting baptized do not understand kind of what that means. I see that all the time, where somebody will get baptized and they will end up behaving worse, or their faith isn't as strong as they thought it was. Just like when you come to college, it's a new environment. You may not think that if you were raised with the Adventist, if you were raised Adventist, if you were raised Christian, your world outlook is completely different than the majority. The statistics say that the majority of the world is Hindu and not Hindu. I think they belong to Islam and Islam, Christianity, and Hinduism, the 3 biggest religions worldwide. But there's so little amount of genuine Christians and genuine followers, and even fewer that understand what they do. I think that's the biggest thing. If you can have like the littlest amount of Bible knowledge, but if you understand why you do all of it, then you'll be fine here. You'll be fine in this environment. Because somebody asks you, "Hey man, why do you worship the way you worship? I see you out here. I see you pray before you eat. I see you. You'll get involved with the stuff." You could answer all those things besides, "Oh, I was just raised that way," or my parents always taught me to do that way. That can speak volumes to somebody. And I was really fortunate to have that. If my mom didn't teach me, my grandfather didn't teach me, I will go and teach myself. And that my strategy is always thinking about it. Always thinking, why am I doing this? What reason am I doing this? Like even with assignments, I won't feel like doing it, right? But I'm like, why do I need to do this assignment correctly? Do all things as if you're doing them right. I try to always relate everything back to, I guess, spirituality. Because this life, the physical, it's all of like the lower level of existence, right? It's the things of lesser value. And the things of spiritual.
Let me interrupt you so we can get those who just came to the table up to snuff. We started out with the question, can I survive spiritually on a secular campus? And many of us have answered that question. And the second question was really, now that you are living independent of your parents, relatively independent of your parents, what have you done to really establish your own personal relationship with God, and how do you live that in this environment away from your parents? What steps, or how did you come to that place, if you've come to that place at all? So if any of you who've just come to the table want to share, we've had and we are recording for our podcast. So if you don't mind stating your name and sharing your response.
I was gonna say kind of like two things. So with the like my parents, so my dad is a pastor, and I was raised Adventist. But I think like Saban was saying, the difference is if you're raised like strict Adventist, and you get put in Adventist schools your entire life, you see it as you were forced into that, and it wasn't a choice. So I guess in that mindset, something you were forced to do isn't the right thing to do, or you just don't want to do it. Because like a lot of things in history, things people were forced to do, that means they didn't want to do it. It wasn't good for them. They were forced into, like slavery and things like that. So I don't know if that's necessarily their mindset. But if you were given the kind of freedom once you get past a certain age, and you have that choice to go to church or not, to read the Bible or not, to pray or not, things like that, you develop a strong relationship because you're choosing to do it and someone's not forcing you to do it. So with being on a secular campus, I think if you, before you got to college, you were given that freedom and you already know what you believe, you know how you want to respond to certain things and certain people, then nothing's going to change that when you come here. So.
Anyone else want to respond?
What was the second question again?
Now that you're out of your parents' home and you are living independent of them relatively so, how do you sustain that spiritual relationship in a secular environment? What have you done to establish that personally?
Well, me, I feel like...
Who are you?
Well, my name is Benjamin Aparicio. To me, since I want to say I'm probably one of the few, well, maybe not the, I'm one, well, I don't know, I want to say most of you guys were, at private schools. I was raised in public all my life. I was raised Christian too, and, but I guess I feel like it's a little easier for me now to be accustomed to have my own habits and ways to continue my faith and continue to rest spiritual ways, because I feel like I've always kind of been doing it for a good bit. But when I first started, it was kind of hard because I would like to do my own things, and I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to do this and that. But what really helped me out to connect with God and stay connected with God was whenever I listened to music. It didn't have to be hymns, because at first I couldn't do hymns. I couldn't, like, hymn was just like, oh my God, they're so boring, it's so the same, so churchly, like it's yeah. But then later on I ended up finding artists like Newsboys, Mercy Me, and artists like that, and then I really liked that music. It really lifted me up, and then from there I started listening to more of that and started branching out, finding more and more. And then whenever I was in the car driving, high school or anything, or even with my parents, they'll be playing it in the background or having the radio, and I'll just be singing along. And then I felt like that was kind of like my own special time with God, because I felt his presence whenever I sang. I felt him in the air. I felt the love. I felt him. So when it comes to campus, I guess it's a little bit easier because I could just have it playing all the time. Whenever I'm doing homework, I just have it in the background. Whenever I can, I'll try to sing. And obviously, since I drive my own now, go to work, I just have it playing in there, and then just jam out, and then that's kind of what keeps me, I guess, happy and then closer to God, at least for now. I'm still working on a few things, like trying to do more Bible study with myself, like try to read the Bible more, but besides that, I try to always they have music playing. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there are no more comments, we're getting close to the 8 o'clock hour. And it's a cold night in Georgia. So I don't want to keep us belabor
It's
the
more
moment.
windy than cold, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's not that cold, but it's just.
Yeah, it
I
is.
could feel my car moving when I was on the way here.
Well, what I'd like you to do is give you an assignment to encourage those who weren't here. If God presents, not if, He will present an opportunity for you to be that example or inspire someone, be they Christian or non-Christian. I'd like to encourage you all to, share some of your experiences on our GroupMe, how God is using you or has used you since we've had this conversation. It encourages me, and I'm sure it encourages others who are in our GroupMe. And I just want you to realize we're all here for a reason. We're not here just to huddle up every Tuesday or Wednesday night and, study the Bible, even though that's good. But we're here to encourage each other. But we're also here to be a light to those who don't even know Christ. This is an opportunity for us to share our religion and our relationship with God. And I just would encourage you to share those on the GroupMe when you feel inspired to. And I want to ask one of you to close out, one or two or whoever. Do we have, we can close out and then we can talk about prayer requests.